Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our deep dive into this LSU program, heading into spring practice, fall camp in the 2024 season. We took a look at the offensive line, took a look at the defensive line, Dill. Now we're taking a look at the offensive skill positions heading into 2024, and you obviously are replacing Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, a three-man weave that was, one of the best that we've seen in a long time at the college football level. But you take a look at the Wisconsin game and the bowl game, and you're feeling pretty good about what this offense is going to look like in 2024 with Nuss taking over this offense. Want to do a couple things. One, talk about what we saw from the film of this LSU offense in 2023. Talk about what made it special, and then take a look at 2024, give you guys a little bit of a projected depth chart in terms of what players are going to be stepping up for the LSU Tigers in 2024. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the LSU fans, whether it's the transfer portal, whether it's the high school recruiting ranks. This has been a program that's been a blast to talk about. You guys have shown a ton of support to the boys. Cannot thank y'all enough. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and more importantly, would love to hear from you guys, your projected depth chart, your projected leading receivers, rushers in the comment section. We'll chop it up there. Again, the best part about doing these is learning from you guys, talking about with you guys in the comment section. Dill, let's start with what we saw in 2023 from this offense. I'll give you the T-box here.
This was just such a well-constructed offense. It felt like this was truly an offense that really attacked every blade of grass.
Yes.
And did it really well. And again, I think the foundation of that is that their offensive line doesn't need help. They don't need to leave guys in the chip or use a tight end to block. They can just really run five guys, and they're really good at every position, going tight end, wide receiver, running backs all catch the ball pretty effectively out of the backfield. I honestly think that'll even get better with Caleb Jackson because he really looks like he's going to be a guy. But that to me is what stands out when you watch LSU is there. You just got to cover so much field. You got to cover so many weapons. It's a handful.
The amount of LSU film we've watched, whether it's for NFL draft prep and watching Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, or whether it's getting ready for this, watching the bowl game, it's a thing of beauty. Right? You take a look at how this offense, in a multitude of ways, this offense can attack opposing defenses. And I think it starts with having a pass catcher unit that can do so many diverse things, right? You have your vertical guy with a Brian Thomas. You have your guy that's just a route runner with Malik Neighbors. And you look at the 2024 year, I think it's going to be much of the same. You have different guys with different skill sets. The number one word I have in my notes is just speed. There is so much speed, so many guys coming out of high school with the verified track times. That's probably what excites me the most. Now, Dill, I want to start with the quarterback position heading into 2024. Garrett Nussmeier taking over the reins. And the thing that popped out at me the most against Wisconsin in that bowl game is just how in command he is of this offense. You can tell he's been with this program. You can tell he's been developed the right way with shout out Joe Sloan doing a great job with the quarterbacks. You don't see a lot of guys come into an offense during those bowl games and just kind of take off where the starting quarterback left off. I thought Garrett Nussmeier did a phenomenal job of that.
You can even go back to the SEC championship where, again, that Georgia team had LSU overmatched. They were getting pressure. There wasn't a ton of separation at times. But again, you throw Garrett Nussmeier in there, kind of what you said, just ultra composed, really does a good job going through his reads. You kind of see his head moving around, doesn't stick on one guy, and also has the arm talent to do what he's got to do. He's a guy, I think LSU is very lucky that he didn't enter a transfer portal.
Yeah.
I think he starts at, what percentage of Power 5 jobs? Probably in the 80s.
A lot.
He'd get a great look for a lot of teams, and to be able to keep him around, and now it's his time. I think he's very ready. Again, very composed, very just steady. I
can see why he decided to stay. I would want to play in this offense as well. And again, Nussmeier, he's not giving you the dynamic athleticism that a guy like Daniels gave you last year. But man, his pocket presence, how quick the ball was getting out on time, accurately. He layers throws exceptionally well. He can rifle it in there, but he can also layer it over zone coverage beautifully. Nussmeier checks a lot of boxes. Very excited for him in 2024. And then you get to this wide receiver room, and I can already sniff out the narratives coming into the summer, right? Oh, they lose Malik Neighbors, they lose Brian Thomas. This is a wide receiver room that's going to take a massive step back. And I mean, I'm not going to get up here and say that this wide receiver room is going to be as good as you saw last year. I mean, you saw two of the best receivers making it happen in 2023. But though, I mean, you bring in CJ Daniels, you bring in a guy like Xavier Thomas in the portal, you have guys like Kyron Lacey and Hilton that you feel really good about. I'll look at this wide receiver room and say it's going to be pretty damn good in 2024 as well.
Yeah, and you can't really replace what they had last year, and that's just like magical. Like, I mean, Malik Neighbors, he's just one of the best college wide receivers, and the amount of like progression he made over the course of his career, just they did a really good job with him. He obviously did a really good job himself, but I'm kind of with you. I mean, if you think that they're going to be like scrubs coming in because they lost two really good players, like you're crazy and you're not watching a lot of football, because you see guys like Mike Hilton or Chris Hilton, sorry, I keep doing that. But Chris Hilton come in and play really good football. You see a guy like Aaron Anderson, you know he's got a ton of talent. And then you bring in a couple transfers. I think CJ Daniels is that like big one. They get their elite, big body, deep threat guy.
CJ Daniels is an NFL guy. Like straight up, if you wanted to declare for the NFL, he would be playing on Sundays next year. I think he wants to come to LSU and kind of do what Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. were able to do last year. I love it because you look at this list and say, all right, CJ Daniels is a guy that averaged 20 yards per catch at Liberty. He's giving you that down the field presence. You want a guy that can stretch the field. You have a guy like Xavier Thomas, and I would throw in Aaron Anderson as guys that, I mean, this LSU offense does a phenomenal job operating in space, getting the ball to their playmakers in space. Those are two guys that can make game-changing plays every time they touch the football. But Dill, I mean, the guy that, and I'll ask you this question in a second, but I'm going to kind of put my flag in the ground right now. You ask me who the leading receiver for this team is going into 2024. I'm going to go with Kyron Lacey. And this is a guy that I'm not going to go crazy and comp him to Malik Neighbors, but smooth route runner, knows how to create separation, knows how to sit it down in zone coverage, all the things that made Malik Neighbors great. You can tell he spent a lot of time with Malik Neighbors in that wide receiver room. He's probably my guy that I think is going to be a true wide receiver one for LSU, but you could say CJ Daniels. You could say Lacey. You could say Hilton. I mean, there's
Hilton's my guy. I mean, when I was watching back some of those games, I mean, the way he tracks a ball down the field and also really fast. I mean, he was taking the top off. When he got one-on-one with those Wisconsin cornerbacks, they were gone. He made a handful of big plays even throughout the year. I think he's the guy to look for. Again, big, smooth, longer I think he's going to have a really good year. I think he's just got a really good innate sense of how to play the football. I'm kind of looking for him. I just think now it looks like there's
an incredible amount of speed in this wide receiver room. I have like the track. I'm not going to go through all the track and field numbers, but I went back and looked at him. I mean, Kyron Lacey, Hilton, Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas have all clocked phenomenal 100-meter dash times coming out of high school. There is, I mean, at a certain point, it's just too much speed for defenses to deal with. And when your offensive scheme is so designed at getting the ball in space, it's hard to see these guys, I mean, not hitting the explosive play like you saw in 2024. And then, Dill, you look at the tight end room. You have a guy in Mason Taylor who, again, probably one of the better tight ends in the country, just didn't get his shine because he was in the same pass catching room as Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to shout out another guy, true freshman Trey'Dez Green. And the LSU fans that have listened on the recruiting trail know how I feel about him. Basketball background, physically just kind of different. You talk about contested catches. You talk about scoring in the red zone when those throwing windows in the space might not be there in the red zone. So you can throw it up to a guy like Trey'Dez Green, who legitimately could be a Division I basketball player, actually might play hoops for LSU. I mean, that's a pretty good recipe there in the tight end room.
Yeah, and I get Trey'Dez Green kind of gives you some upside for sure, but I'm kind of with you, like to just sleep on Mason Taylor and some of the way I don't think he's treated as like that premier tight end. One thing that stands out to me with Mason Taylor is you go back to that Georgia game, you kind of felt like him and Nussmeier that was like the comfort zone. That was the safety blanket. When Nussmeier was getting pressure and he had to make play, the ball kind of was going to Mason Taylor. And that's what stands out to me when you have that sort of relationship with the QB and tight end. I think you can be dangerous. But with Mason Taylor, I think he's, again, when you talk about LSU being able to attack everywhere on the field with their wide receivers, have a diverse set of skill sets, I think what makes Mason Taylor so special is you don't see a lot of tight ends who can run routes at the short level like he does. I mean, he can get in and out of his breaks, can run those shallow crosses, can run those shallow outs, and he works the flats really effectively, along with the ability to work the seams. So for him, that's a really, I think, dangerous tight end that a lot of teams don't have because most tight ends can't move like that.
I'll say this, like, it's rare to find like legit kind of game-changing tight ends. You see a lot of that. I mean, average tight ends, you don't see difference makers. Like you have a difference maker in Mason Taylor, and you might have not have seen, you saw it more as a true freshman than you saw it in that 2023 year. I think you see that game-changing tight end that Mason Taylor is in this 2024 year.
Also block in space, which is important for this LSU team, as you kind of mentioned, some of those guys like an Aaron Anderson or Xavier Brown who can work the like underneath and work those screens and be able to make plays with their feet. And when you got guys like Mason Taylor who are very good blockers in space, I think that again add another skill set to what they need to do to be as dangerous as they were last year. And what
he's a hammer. He's a hammer blocking, and you don't talk about it enough because he's a good pass catcher. But he is very, very good.
I know you don't talk about blocking when guys can catch at the tight end spot, but
he gets it done. Like, and again, there's not many tight ends that can do it both ways. Now, the last position group we got to talk about, the running back room, and I thought, like, I don't know, underwhelming could be a word last year. I think Logan Diggs was solid. I don't think he was a difference maker. You have Josh Williams coming back, giving you that veteran presence, but Dill, not to disrespect a guy like Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson is the guy we have our eyes on.
Caleb Jackson show. I mean,
Caleb Jackson is a difference maker. Another guy that's run a sub 1100. He's 225 pounds. A 10.6 600-meter dash. He had 31 carries last year, Dill. Forced 11 missed tackles. I mean, that's incredible. And he's a guy that's a bruiser that can make it happen in space. There's not a lot of boxes that Caleb Jackson doesn't step going into year 2 with the LSU offense.
Just go look at that sequence. It was right before the end of the half against Wisconsin. That touchdown, like he made both plays. He caught the ball in the first time, and then he took one in or took the carry into the end zone. But that ability to get in and out of his cuts and be a little more effective in space, because that was the one disappointing thing I thought with those LSU running backs from last year. They weren't super dynamic athletes. And with the way that offense is constructed, I get it. Logan Diggs, like when he wants to hammer on you, he can hammer it. But I think you still need to be able to move. You need to be able to make guys miss, get in and out of your cuts and go and do it quickly without slowing down. That's what you see from Caleb Jackson. I think that elevates this offense meaningfully. And again, you're talking, you got to replace a lot of rushing production and explosive rushing production from a guy like Jaden Daniels. I think you'll have more explosive running back play with Caleb Jackson because he feels different than the other.
He does, and his ability to make people miss at the side, because this LSU offensive line and this LSU offense in general is going to give you the opportunity to be one-on-one backers and safeties at the next level. Caleb Jackson's ability to make people miss is phenomenal. And Dill, I'll throw out the true freshman again. I don't know, like it's the recruiting in me. I want to see some of these guys that we've talked about at the high school level get on the field. You talk about speed, and I don't know, am I just off on my evals with running backs at the high school level? Caden Durham, I think, is one of the best running backs in the country coming out of high school. He's a guy that he's kind of a little bit of a shorter muscle hamster guy. He's up to 195 pounds, thick lower half. Is also a guy that runs a sub 10 500 meter. I mean, this guy is absolute burners. You have two guys in Caleb Jackson and Caden Durham who are one of the faster two players on the football field.
And it's not a bad thing when you look a little different from a speed perspective when you're playing at a school like Duncanville that's playing as good of players as anyone in the country. I mean, you just kind of notice it. He can really, really fly.
You see, and then the track times are going to back it up. Like he's also putting up track times that are some of the best in the country. So I love it because I do feel like, again, the running back play wasn't bad last year. I don't think it was the greatest fit in terms of what
didn't complement what LSU's offense.
Yeah. Like Noah Cain's a bruiser. I love that. But like you want your guys to operate in space. And I think Caleb Jackson, Caden Durham are the guys to operate in space. Really excited for the running backs. Really excited for this offense as a whole. Again, I think people are going to sleep on this offense because you're losing the top three players from this offense, generationally talented guys. Joe Sloan back. This is going to be an offense that's really fun to watch in 2024.
Real quick, who do you have leading wide receiver?
Ooh. Good. I'm gonna go with my guy Kyron Lacey. CJ. I think this is the beauty. Again, you told me real quick. I'm take the time here. Kyron Lacey is my first choice, but again, CJ Daniels. I know you're a Chris Hilton guy. A lot of good options. I think we're both going with Caleb Jackson as the leading rusher.
I was gonna say there's not much argument.
That's not much argument for the boys there. Again, all right. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.